Hello YouTube! As you can see, today we're gonna talk about the color green. God, that was a terrible joke. Yeah, this is not very subtle, is it? Um, so, Hollywood decided that it is time to talk about one of my favorite things ever, and that is villains. There are 3 movies right now in the works for famous supervillains in comics: Doctor Doom, Venom, and of course, the Joker. If you got that before I tell you, give yourself a small clap. And I wanted to discuss why I love villains and why I love the Joker and why I think villain-centered stories are kind of a bad idea. So, what is it? Why do I like villains? Well, a good hero story, and this is like a well-known the recommendation from where you're writing a story, is that your hero is as good as its villain and vice versa. And that is because a villain is a creature that creates a plot for you. He makes the thing that you want to do in your story, if your story happens to have a villain. The whole goal of your story, if he's there, is to be defeated by your hero, or maybe even succeed. But the point is that the story is happening because there was one guy that decided to make the plot happen. And not all characters that do evil deeds are villains. You have characters like antagonists that just have like a very particular beef against your protagonist. And if your protagonist is evil, then your antagonist could be good. There's also the anti-heroes. There are just people that have very shady moral values, but they don't necessarily are bad people or are against your lead character. And then of course there's the villains. And what I really like about villains is that they're the only characters within fiction that not only do evil deeds, but they enjoy it. And that is not something very common. Of course, in real life, when a person does something evil, it's not black and white. Sometimes you do something bad or evil because you have some reason that to you it seems like the right thing to do. It's very, very bizarre to find someone in the real world that does something evil because the devil told me to do it, because I just wanted to be evil. Like those kind of actions within real people, I don't want to say that they're impossible, but they're downright improbable. And that doesn't happen with fiction. In fiction, you can have a character do evil for evil's sake, and that is what makes them very enjoyable. One of the characters that does this the most, of course, is the Joker. He's a character that he has had different origin story or stories in the time that he got created, but at the end of the day, none of them really matter. Like, you don't care why the Joker does the things that he does. You just are there for the ride. You're there to see him be Batman's enemy. You're seeing him to give out punchlines. You're seeing him there to be just his wicked way. Another characters that are like this are Disney villains. They're characters that are a bit more within the black and white kind of thing. I don't want to say that they're not complex, but they're definitely not in the gray area that other villains can be. And one of my favorite ones are like Maleficent, Ursula, or Lady Tremaine, like the stepmother from Cinderella. Because when you really think about it, those women, those bitches, the only reason that they do the things that they do is because they're evil. Maleficent is one of my favorite ones, but I will discuss Maleficent in a bit because there's something I have to say about Maleficent. So okay, we agree that villains are a very enjoyable thing when it comes to fiction. It makes us root for our hero or boo for them. It's why people sometimes see entertainment like wrestling. like WWE, because there's like great villains that you just love to hate. So, is it possible to tell a story where your lead is a villain? Yes and no. In theory, you can do whatever you want when it comes to fiction. But the thing is that when you're writing a story, you want your character to evolve. You want him to start as something and then at the end of the story to have change in some manner. Villains don't do that. Villains, by their very own definition, stay the same throughout the entire story. Because they're evil. They think they're perfect the way they are. They're narcissistic. They're like confident about how evil and disgusting they are, and they love it. And therefore they cannot evolve. Then there's no arc. If there's no arc, there's no story. That's what I wanted to talk about Maleficent. It's not the first time that Hollywood has tried to tell the story of a villain, and it is often come to terms now with Hollywood, the term sympathetic villain. That is that we as a public do relate to the villain in some sort, but the thing is that the way that Hollywood thinks that you can sympathize with a villain is by making them a tragic figure, or by having them have noble reasons for the hideous deeds that they do. And this is really annoying because then your villain is no longer evil. It's just he's a misunderstood misfit that got like shoved by the system, and now he has to do evil things, but he doesn't really want to because he has a heart of gold. And they did this with Maleficent, which is super annoying because Maleficent is one of the greatest baddies of all of fiction, at least the Disney version that they come up with, because the whole point of Maleficent is that she enchants Princess Aurora because she didn't got invited to the equivalent of a baby shower. That's it. She decides to kill this poor baby because she didn't got invited to a baby shower. That is so evil. She really has no other reason. If you have seen the movie Maleficent with Angelina Jolie, you know that they completely changed this. So, in Maleficent, what happens is that she was actually a real fairy, but Aurora's dad was actually a really huge asshole, and they were in love. And then he cheated on her and broke up with her and took her wings. And then she just wanted to protect the forest, but Aurora's dad was really evil, so he didn't want to have her there, so he took her powers away, and now Maleficent no longer can fly. And then she enchanted the baby, because she enchanted the baby. And then instead of killing the baby, she took care of the baby. And the true love's kiss was by her. And they tried to make her sympathetic because they want her to be a hero, because heroes can lead, villains can't. Villains are supportive characters. They're there to make your good guy look good. They can look great by looking bad, but the whole point of a villain is that he's there to make the good guy look good. And with Maleficent is that they no longer had a bad guy that could make the other characters look good. So what did? They had to make villains of other characters. They make a villain out of Aurora's dad, and he's a terrible character. Terrible character, not in the sense that he does bad things, in the sense that he sucks when it comes to the quality of how he is as a character. He's like a terrible character. Another character that they also threw under the shaft was Dracula in Dracula Untold. The whole idea was like the origin of Dracula, like you never saw it before. And what is it? It was a tragic origin story where Dracula is evil because he wanted to be a vampire so that he could defend his kingdom, and then he sold his soul to the devil, but then the devil tricked him and now he's Dracula. I really need to stop doing that, boys. So the only reason that the only way that Hollywood can think of making these villains sympathetic is to make them really tragic figures. And that doesn't For instance, when it comes to the Joker, he does have already kind of a tragic origin story, which is of course the Killing Joke, and they already did a movie of that, and it didn't work. Yeah, see, bad sex with a T, and you'll see why. Um, and in that story, in the Killing Joke, they do try to make him a tragic story, but it's like I said, people like the Joker not because they can relate to him as a tragic figure, but simply because he loves the fun. He enjoys the ride, and not a lot of villains nowadays do that. If you do a origin story of this, you will take away that because you will try to bring people to a level of relatability with a character that is not relatable at all. I cannot relate. I like the Joker, like a lot. I like the Joker a lot, but I cannot relate to the Joker because he is completely and utterly insane. He takes joy in destroying things. He abuses people that are there for helping him. He's obsessed with Batman. Like, I cannot relate to the Joker on an emotional level because I'm not supposed to. He's something greater than the rest of the characters because he's supposed to be a super threat. That's why he's a super villain. It's been said about villains that their capability of doing evil, their motivation, it's almost inhuman. And that's how highly motivated they are. So, if you try to make him relatable by actually making him like I can already see it. Like, oh, he was a comedian, and then, the world treated him really bad because the world is not fair. Feel bad for the Joker, and now he can only laugh at his own jokes. Give me a break. I already see the Joker laughing like that. So, while it is possible to write stories that have villains in important places, it is very hard to make a story about a villain as a lead for the reasons that they don't change. You really cannot relate to them as a person because you're not supposed to. And they're supportive characters. They're there to make the other characters look good. Like I said, in theory, you can write a story about anything. But the way that Hollywood treats villains, I really don't see it working. Not for the Joker, not for Venom, not for Doctor Doom. But it's not gonna stop Hollywood about doing it. But it's not the only reason why I think this movie is not going to work. On the second part, we will discuss the beauty that it is Leonardo DiCaprio.